We'll go ahead and get it started. We'll run through a couple slides here at the beginning, and then I will pass it over to our technical guru, Richard, and he will run through the Genesys administrator training for us and go through all of that. So we'll head on over to the next slide here and talk about what is to come in this training. First things first, we'll kind of talk about who InflowCX is. There are a good number of existing customers on this call, but for anybody new or unfamiliar, we'll run through that. And then, of course, as we get into the bulk of the training, we'll talk about call queues and scheduling and what that looks like within the Genesys platform. And then we will wrap it up with any questions that you guys may have. We'll run through a Q&A and get that taken care of. So we'll touch on the first slide, who is InflowCX, which is a great question, and we're more than happy to answer it for you. InflowCX, we're an innovative provider for a multitude of products and platforms. We also have a strategic advisory, deployment and managed services attachment to our business around contact center, customer experience, and of course, the unified communications solution. We'll give you a hand with everything from guidance, execution, and optimization for the engagement strategy for your customers, consumers, and of course your employees as well. Our expertise is quite vast. We span from the CX and UCaaS systems to CCaaS. We do everything from workforce management, automation, analytics, and everything in between. So we have a wide array of what we can support and help you look for in your next or current system. Best part of it is we provide a vendor neutral approach to the CX technology space when that comes to evaluation, labor strategies, operational effectiveness, anything along those lines. We've got quite a hand in every aspect of the business. Not only have we done multiple unified communications projects, 1,000 plus, we've also done over 500 CCaaS installs, which gives us quite a knowledge base when it comes to a multitude of products, along with their services and anything that accompanies with it. We have about 75 employees here. We're all remote, so we're all across the US, but we range from the sales side to consultants, technical and customer support. We are all here to help you in anything that you may have. And kind of the things that we like to shine through and really touch on are some of our industry accolades. We've got a couple here, but of course, one that's important for today's call is going to be the Genesys Implementation Partner of the Year. That's one we really like to touch on. It's a hard award to achieve, and we're more than happy to be able to have earned that. Not only that, we also work with other contact center providers and of course UCaaS providers as their certified implementation partners and also preferred partners as well. And then on the bottom right, you'll see two lovely rankings, one from G2, which is other businesses like yourselves, highly ranking us there for anything from the guidance, the execution stage, and the optimization stage of looking into their businesses and helping them. And then, of course, our Glassdoor rating for our employees as well. So I'm one to speak highly of it, and I'm sure that there are many, many others who will. But of course, customers like yourself, we do have quite an array of customers and who we work with. Some of those customers that we include span multiple spaces. We have them in the tech space from Vroom, PH Tech. We've got retailers like Domino's and Papa Murphy's. And of course, it also spans across real estate, Zillow, RMLS, healthcare, and finance and insurance. What we like to touch on here, more important than anything, is that we are able to stretch across multiple industries and, more importantly, multiple organizations to help innovate their customer experience. So there really is no one vertical that we work within. We're more than capable of working within numerous to make sure that you and others are taken care of as best we can. Now, of course, what does that look like when it comes to partners and who we work with partners? Well, we work with a vast amount of them. From the CCaaS space, you can see there at the top, Genesys, and of course, some of its competitors like Five9, NICE, and UJet, amongst others. And then on the UCaaS side, we work with the industry leaders like RingCentral and Zoom. Of course, there are the other outliers like Fuse, 8x8, Teams, and Dialpad. And the best part of it all is we also work within the CX ecosystem. So within your CX space or your CCaaS space, I should say, you'll have other entities such as workforce management, quality and analytics, AIs and bots, along with compliance, CRM, surveys, BPOs. We're able to do all of that today. We work closely with a multitude of companies, as you can see listed here, that touch on all of those levels, anything from automation to workforce management, improving the ability to report on your employees, also customer satisfaction as well. along with outsourcing. We're also a large component of that. We have a piece of our business that works with BPOs and being able to get you hiring quick when you need it. So furthermore, we'll touch on the main point of today's topic, which is going to be your Genesys administrator training. And there is no one better than Richard himself to touch on it. So we'll transition over to the call queues portion and run through that. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, if you have any questions about what you're seeing, please feel free to put it in the chat and we will make sure to answer it promptly. So without further ado, Richard, go ahead and take it away.
Morning, everybody. I'm Richard Dixon. I've been with Inflow for about 2.5 years now. We're going to go over call queues and how they work within the system. So call queues, it's an organization. This is important depending on how big your system is. You can only have 5,000 queues, which is a lot, but it might be a limit to some individuals. So that's something to keep in mind. And the membership per queue is also 5,000 members per queue. You cannot duplicate queues in name, and each name needs to be unique. And they cannot contain asterisks. So those are important things to understand when we're doing this. When you open up Genesys, you're going to see that under the container contact center, you're going to have queues. That's where you're going to want to click to be able to open this up. Another thing to remember is a user with routing, queue member, and manage permissions, but not the routing, queue member, edit permissions, can only manage the queue membership. So if you want to limit somebody, you have the ability to do that. So they can't make edits to the queue, but they can add individuals to it to manage that portion of it. Prerequisites. There is a ton of prerequisites for this, and they allow it to very much be dialed in to what your needs are. So for basic portions of it, you're going to need the routing, the queue, add, edit, delete, join, and view, along with architect UI view to be able to dive in and to be able to see this. The following permissions are required to edit or view prompts within architect for Whisper audio. So if you have Whisper audio or the need for Whisper audio, you're going to need architect, user prompt view, and user prompt edit. And the Whisper audio feature is only available, or the feature requires the Edge and Media Tier version 1.00725 or later in order to be able to have access to that. The following permissions are needed if you're going to add and, to be able to add to the queue. So you'll need add. If you want to be able to edit, to be able to configure and membership, you'll need edit. To be able to delete, it's pretty self-explanatory there. Delete. If you want to join a queue, you're going to need the access to be able to join. If you want to be able to view, you're going to need view. Routing queue member management. This is to change the queue member management. That's what we're talking about the first slide there. The architect UI view. The following permissions are needed for the Whisper audio prompt, which is the user view and the user edit. So after we click, I'm going to jump back a slide here. So after we click on queues, this is the view that you're going to see. So it's going to pop open and you're going to have the option to create a queue. If you click the plus mark next to the queue at the top there, it will pull open a slide, or another view kind of pops up on the right hand side, and it's going to be very simple. It's going to have a name. So this is where you're going to name the queue whatever you want. You can do division. So you have a multi-divisional unit. You can assign it to that. And you can also copy settings and members from another one if you need to mirror a queue to have a different tiered system. After that, you'll click save, and then it will bring you to this view. So when this view comes up, you're going to have your name, you're going to have a description. It's going to give you optional after call work, which we'll go over here in a few, as well as after call work timeout and enable manual sign-in or manual assignment. So the ACW, which is going to be the after call work, that's going to be where the agent performs immediately after the call. So this gives them some space to be able to enter information in, such as being able to act like an activity code or updating databases or be able to take notes on a case that they've had. This gives them the time and the benefit to be able to not take another call during this time, to keep them off the queue for the duration that you have here, to be allowed to take those important notes or add that important database entry, or give them a space or a breather between calls. That way they're not getting immediate back-to-back calls. That way they have a little bit of opportunity to take a breath between the two. Manual assignment, most people recognize that as cherry picking, but with the users with the appropriate permission, they can manually assign waiting interactions to other agents or to themselves, depends on how they have it set up. So if you wanted a manager to be able to manage calls that are coming in, to be able to assign them to individual users, you have the ability to do that. But a lot of the other routing options that we're going to see here in a minute will give us the option to automatically route calls where they best fit. So standard routing, this is going to be the basic, the default when you create a queue. You'll notice that there's different evaluation methods as well. So it's going to be a skills-based routing. So agents will be assigned a skill, and those skills are going to be looked at to see if they're eligible. So as far as the different options here, you have best available skills. So the ACD considers 100 agents with the longest time since the last interaction, so the longest idle time. Of those agents, it's going to find the one with the required skills and the highest average skill proficiency as possible for multiple agents within the same skill proficiency. So if I had a skill of IT on here and I had it a skill of 5 and somebody else had it as a 10, it's going to optimize and go to the individual with the 10 for the best available skill in that situation. That way, the most efficient person has the availability to do it. That way, it automatically routes to the best individual. And then it can choose from there if there's other individuals not available. So if that person who is on 10, we can reduce that and go, hey, we're going to search for the next person down, which might be the individual on 5. All skills matching, this one must have all the skills in order to be able to do it. So if I am missing a single skill from it, but I am still in that queue, it will not ever assign me that call that's coming in. So I must have every single skill matching on there, and that's 100% match in order for it to distribute that way. And then the last one would be disregard skills next agent. So that means it's going to disregard all skills. There's no skills involved, and it's only going to look for the agent with the longest time that they haven't had an interaction, so the longest idle time. Bullseye routing is the second option here. Bullseye routing gives you a much wider array of being able to get calls to the individuals who are best suited for this. So in a situation kind of like the all skills must match, it would be where if they're all matching, but we don't have anybody available, who would it go to next? Well, in this situation, because there is nobody with the matching skills and we don't want that call to sit and wait for somebody, we want to have somebody with maybe a similar skill set, but not all of them. That's where Bullseye routing would come into play. It would allow me to strip one of those skills away after X amount of time to be able to give it to another individual. So think of it kind of just like a dartboard where you have the center. This is where I want all the calls to go. But if I can't hit that center every single time, I can jump out to rings further and further out. So with the skills routing method, an agent must have all the required skills, like I was saying, to be eligible for that interaction. With the Bullseye method, it's very similar, but it allows you to expand the agent pool if no agents with that required skill are available within configurable time. You can think of the expansion set, kind of the concentric rings, like the Bullseye that I was talking about with the dartboard there. Each one allows you to go further and further out to allow greater sets in that. And I'll go back to this. So the evaluation method still has the same set. So you can do all set, best available, or disregard. So you can even set it up to disregard skills and still have the Bullseye routing and go, I want it to present to these agents first. If they're not available, we can go to this next group of agents following, and that's how you would go about that. So go to the last one here.
Hey, Richard. Quick
Yes.
question for you. We have a quick question in the chat. Actually, two real quick we can touch on. David asked, is there a way to add a way to manually select ACW or add an additional status that codes as ACW for reporting?
So as far as ACW, we'll jump into that when we get to wrap codes. So sure. Each individual will have the ability to, after the call, so that's the after call work, where they can assign based upon wrap codes what that's going to be. So they could do something like, oh, this is a spam call, or this needed to be transferred, or whatever option you want to have to be able to tag that for anybody to be able to recognize what they're looking for as far as reporting goes. So I can search by individuals who have transferred out, so I can look at those where they choose that list as well. And as to the how many skills can be assigned, that's as many skills as you have the availability to assign to them. I've not seen a limit offhand for limit to the amount of skills. Now, if you're going to assign a bunch of skills to somebody, you're going to also have to have that within the queue to assign those skills to that call. So it needs to match up. And if it's, again, where it's all users in that situation where they have to match that skill set, that's going to be quite a few skills that'll have to be assigned to it. So having a ton in there might not be the best option if we're doing match all skills. Now, if it's best available, that might be, better if you add a whole bunch of skills and look that way. But for all matching skills, that probably wouldn't advise going that direction with adding a ton of skills to that user. So we'll go back to preferred agent routing here. So this is going to route interaction pools to preferred agents, similar to Bullseye routing. When the system matches more than one preferred agent, it's going to initially evaluate the top agent first, and then the next highest available agent. You can choose evaluation rules. For example, you can set the ring with 2 agents with 30 seconds and the top 5 agents for the next 30 seconds after that. The pool of agents can only expand. The system does not reduce it. So that's going to be a little different because in the Bullseye routing, you can actually reduce the amount of agents, while the preferred agent, you can only expand from there. You can set the agent score to range from 0 to 100. The higher the score, the more preferred the agent. So multiple agents can have the same exact score as well. So members, in this case, I have it set up in this queue where it is Bullseye routing. If you notice, on the right-hand side, you'll see Bullseye routing number. So this is where I'm going to assign the ring. So if I make it Bullseye routing, I still have another step where I need to assign members to that Bullseye routing ring where I want it. So in the first ring, that's going to be most everybody. If there's nobody available for, kind of a technical support level, then we could jump it down to like a tier 2 where they're not able to maybe help as well, but they're still able to help in that situation. They're just not preferred in that situation. But what you'll do is where it says at the top, search by new members or select members, you'll hit the plus mark, and then you'll be able to search by members that are already created within system to be able to add to this queue. Wrap codes, this is where we were discussing a little bit earlier of what we can assign here. So if you click the plus mark, you can assign it. There is not a lot of extra information other than it's just going to be a label as far as the ACW reporting. So it's just going to be something like, spam call, ghost call. You could even put something like upset user to be able to flag it to make it a little bit easier to be able to identify if there is a unhappy customer on the line. You could, for the transfers, you could even break it down even further from that and go to each individual queue that you wanted to. Oh, this is a transfer to, accounting or sales or something like that. It's just going to be a single label. There's no extra details with it other than this is a label that is applied to that call. That way we can identify why it was, what the call was about at a quick glance without having to dive into it. So voice, this is going to set your service level. This can be adjusted per queue to make it alert you to understand when we're maybe not meeting our needs in this situation. So somebody has missed a call because it's alerted for more than 20 seconds in this situation. So there is one caveat to that. If it is transferred from multiple queues to queues, so if I was in a different queue and it transferred to this queue and it transferred through 3 agents on the other queue that added up to almost 20 seconds, and then it came over to my queue, which is the queue that we're looking at right now. If it comes over here and the total time of alert is greater than 20 seconds, it's still going to flag that call in that situation. Currently, I do not know of a way around it, just as aware of it, but there's currently no workable way around the alerting level there where it's going to indicate and flag that, hey, there was a service that was less than our 80% or went over the 20 seconds. But you can look at the actual individual call and look at the transfers and see where that alerting time was and where the greatest amount of alerting time was. That way you can identify, maybe it was mistransferred from one location to another because an agent wasn't sure where to send it. This will allow you to backtrack as well from there. So if you have a service level and it does go over that, you can at least go back and look at the individual call to be able to identify which one went over the SLA, which is going to be that 20 seconds there, which is roughly about 4 rings because it's about six seconds per ring there. If it alerts for that amount of time over, we can jump back and look at that call and then try to track down why it went over that if your agent in that queue answered it within the proper amount of time. It may have had an accumulation of time for alerting by being transferred around to other queues before it wound up in this final queue. Next one is chat. Very similar. It's going to have the same information available to it as far as service level. Messaging is going to have the same setup here as well. Email, the learning timeout and the service level target. And then callbacks. They all have very similar service levels there. Let's see, there was another question here. So I'm not aware of the ability to add extra time in that situation. So I'll read the question out here. So wrap codes don't really help in my inquiry. For example, agents have a 10 seconds of ACW time box, but they need additional time due to a complex call. I need a way to have agents select an ACW status so they can, that the system can capture that extended ACW time. I would say probably the best bet would be to have a status set up in that, so they could go out of the queue and have the status set for that, and that will be able to be tracked in that situation of how long that agent was in a separate status. So in this case, I'm on Genesys, we work there. I'm typically on an ITQ to be able to answer calls that are coming in. Right now I'm setting a meeting status. But if I had a situation, and this has happened a couple times, where I had a call that came in that went longer or that was complicated and I had to add a lot more notes, then I would put myself in an away status. That way I wouldn't receive a call, but I also inform my manager of that status and go, hey, this call went a little bit longer. There's a lot more details I need to add to this because it's a very complex call in this situation and I need more time afterwards. They're aware of that. It's just a bit of communication and being able to flag myself in that situation so I don't receive another call. Hopefully that answered your question, David. No, that wouldn't be categorized as ACW in that part. I'd have to look to see if there's any other options to be able to extend to ACW, but I don't believe there is. It's just what the current timeout is, and that's usually programmed for like a minute or however long. I don't believe, like with Mitel, where you could do an extend option there, where you'd be able to push that out further and further. We'll have to get back to you on that one, but I don't believe it is possible currently. All right, we're going to move on to scheduling. So scheduling, this is going to be under the routing container and then under scheduling. So Genesys Cloud applications such as Architect and outbound dialing refer to schedules when making a determination about how to manage inbound and outbound interactions. So this is what's going to allow you to route those calls based upon what information the system has. So the queue, you would assign a schedule to it to be able to tell it what to do, kind of like in Mitel, where you would have the ability to have an auto attendant with a schedule to tell it to go on hours or off hours, very similar in that situation. For example, a schedule can be determined to the interaction flow to execute during closed hours or daytime hours, or the outbound dialing campaign when it should stop. The prerequisites that are required to be able to access this is Architect Flow Add, Architect Flow Edit, Architect Flow View, Routing Schedule Group, Add, Edit, and View Delete permissions. So schedule groups, when you click on scheduling, this is the view that you're going to see. You're going to have two options, which is schedule group and schedules. The schedule group we'll dive into a little bit after this, but basically it's going to be a culmination of the open time, the close time, and the holiday of the individual schedules that you make in schedules. Once we click on schedules, the tab at the top, we'll want to click add a schedule. When you add a schedule, you're going to have to name it. And the first one that's going to pop open is just going to be a singular event. So this is going to be a time frame, a single event, not a lot of information other than just that single event. Now, if you wanted a repeating one, you would click the repeating event icon, and we're going to start with that. So after you click repeating, you're going to have repeat per day, per week, per month, per year, as far as the frequency and how often it repeats. We're going to start with day. This is the view that you're going to see with the day. Repeats every single day, or every 2 days, or every other day. However you set it up, it's going to be either an all day or a time frame. And then you can have a start and end time. The one that I see most people use is this next one, which is going to be the weekly one. This is typically where I see somebody set up the schedule for the week. So, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you would select each one of those. They would highlight in blue to indicate which day of the week that you want it to happen. And this is typically where you would assign your 8 to 5 or 9 to 7, whichever your scheduling is. This is where you would apply that to go, these are your open hours. When you go to month, you have the option to go per date on the month, and then you can have a conditional rule. So I've added a conditional rule in this case. If the date is on Monday and on the 27th of the month, this is where it would kick off. This allows you to identify days of, the first Monday of every week, we're going to be down, or the first Monday of the month, or the first Tuesday of every month, we're going to be down for a company meeting. This is where you would be able to program that in. For the year event, it repeats every however many often. You have the year and then what month. So you can choose what month that you want it to repeat on, as well as the day. You can also add the same conditional rules as the monthly. So go back to schedule groups. So adding a schedule group, this allows you to group everything together and add multiples in here. So for the open schedule, for our opening time, I would hit the plus mark. It would allow me to choose a schedule. So I have to have these pre-made, which is what we made in the scheduling portion of it, or the schedule portion of it. You'll be able to choose and add. So I can add multiple schedules. So for example, I want Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. I would click open. I would also add, if I know that I'm going to have a monthly meeting every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Or 10 a.m., that would also be able to be added to the open schedule there. So it would realize during that time, it's going to be open and only available during those times. You also want to select the time zone. That will allow you to choose the proper time zone. That way we make sure that we're operating off this group within the time zone that you expect. That way, if you have different schedule groups or different agents spread out throughout the United States or wherever else in the world, you have the ability to schedule and go, hey, they're only open for this time frame during this time zone.
Fantastic. Well, really appreciate that, Richard. Thank you for filling us in on an admin training for the Genesys system. Want to open it up real quick. I know we're coming up against the half hour, but anyone have any last minute questions that we can go ahead and address for you on things you may have seen or curiosities that may have arose after seeing these? And of course, if you do have questions and we aren't able to answer them today, we are more than happy to field all those questions via email or phone call, which we will provide here. So you can see our numbers here. We'll also go ahead and put those shortly in the chat so that you are able to save those. Feel free to get in touch with us either way, phone or email. We were happy to give you any feedback, any sort of questions that you may have. We're happy to answer them if you require more training. We've also got some great resources and videos out there across multiple platforms. We've got videos that we put on YouTube similar to these trainings. We've got them on LinkedIn as well. And of course, we have a podcast that's out on Apple Podcasts today, which we cover a lot of industry experts, most of which will touch on anything within the CX ecosystem today, some of which is Genesys or UCAS, a lot of great listens there. So feel free to check us out on there, and we will be able to provide you any extra resources and tools. So thank you all for coming today. We appreciate you tuning in and taking part in our webinar, and we look forward to helping you in the future. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good day.